we're holding this of Women's History Month. Yeah. This month-long commemoration of the contributions of women has the socialist-initiated International Women's Day. On February 28, 1909, the first Women's Day was organized by the Socialist Party of America. A year later, German women proposed an international day to be celebrated annually at the 1910 International Socialist Women's Conference. From then on, working women around the world have celebrated the day to highlight women's achievements and to call for full equality. After the Russian Revolution, Bolsheviks Vladimir Lenin and Alexandra Kollontai spearheaded the effort to make March 8th the official holiday to celebrate women. This date corresponds to the day on the old Russian calendar in 1917, when women textile workers in Petrograd, now St. Petersburg, led a general strike that kicked off the February Revolution that forced the tyrannical Tsar to abdicate. As socialist feminists, we honor the struggle and contributions of working women every March and push for the revolutionary fight for women's complete liberation to continue. Yes. Okay. Now, I guess we already announced the raffle, but Sandra, if you want to speak again about the raffle.
Okay. Nothing to add except, for goodness sake, buy some raffle tickets, because what you will win is this. And thanks to our authoress, Angela, on the panel, she will sign it. So I've absolutely no idea how much it is. No idea whatsoever, but it's a terrific raffle prize. And look at that. It's absolutely jammed.
430 pages or something like that.
So nice. Oh my goodness gracious. So if you want to buy raffle tickets, you can come and buy raffle tickets here. They're $1 for just one ticket and $2.50 for 3. My God. And if you want to be like Meredith, you buy at least 11 million so that she can get the book.
I needed a second copy.
Oh, yes, exactly. But welcome, Angela.
So
Thank you so much. Super.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to be here.
So I'll give a brief introduction on the book that we're raffling off. Keith Care chronicles the movement of feminist trailblazers to provide full reproductive health, including abortion, from the days before Roe versus Wade to the first decade of the 21st century. Based on interviews with activists, Angela Hume uncovers the history from the women who set up self-help groups to learn and carry out their own care procedures to the activists who defended abortion clinics against right-wing extremists. So our author, Angela Hume. Angela Hume is a feminist historian, critic, and poet. In addition to writing 2 books of poetry, she co-edited a collection of essays, and she teaches writing at UC Berkeley. Our next speaker is Meredith Cooper. Meredith Cooper is a queer neurodivergent educator and reproductive justice activist. Meredith joined the SF chapter of the National Mobilization for Reproductive Justice in fall of 2022 after searching for a group that was actively organizing for reproductive justice and against the right wing. She is a member of the Freedom Socialist Party. Our next speaker is Nancy Kato. Nancy Kato got involved in the fight for reproductive justice in her college years. Radical Women has been part of the militant leadership of the Bay Area reproductive rights movement, and Nancy represented Radical Women in the sister song Women of Color for Reproductive Rights Coalition. She is the co-founder of BayCore, Bay Area Coalition for Our Reproductive Rights, a member of the National Mobilization for Reproductive Justice Labor Working Group, a proud union sister in AFSCME Council 57 retiree chapter, and the organizer for Bay Area Freedom Socialist Party. So we're going to start off with a brief reading by Angela of her book.
Thank you so much, everyone, for having me today. I'm so happy to be on this panel with Meredith and Nancy. It's an honor to come and be able to just share the book and celebrate the book with you all. And as probably many of you in the room know, the Freedom Socialist Party radical women played
good
a
shape,
constitutive
actually.
role
You'd be
in
surprised.
shaping radical abortion defense in the San Francisco Bay Area. They have historically, and they continue to do so today with the current Reproductive Justice Coalition. So there's something really kind of special and exciting about like sitting here with this book and sharing just a little bit of it with you today, alongside Nancy, who was such a major player and who was someone who I had the privilege of interviewing and working with in order to begin to kind of grasp the history and figure out, imagine ways to narrativize it. So it's kind of amazing to share history that is living history, right? So I will, I guess, probably just read for a few minutes from the book. And I think my thought was that I would just read a few introductory passages.
We are not muted.
Are we recording?
We are recording. Okay, my apologies. I forgot to remind everyone, we're being recorded. Yeah.
Good to know. Good to know. Yes. Oh, no problem. Excuse me, no problem at all. So I was thinking what I would do is just read some introductory passages just to give you a sense of the scope of the book in slightly more detail. There are substantive chunks of the book about clinic defense and the role that radical women and the Freedom Socialist Party played in clinic defense. I won't read those today. We can talk more about, Nancy will share some of that history, and we can talk more about that history when we kind of move into conversation. So for the purpose of the introduction, I'll just do a few passages from the kind of beginning of the book. So the book is called Deep Care: The Radical Activists Who Provided Abortions, Defied the Law, and Fought to Keep Clinics Open. It's published by AK Press, which is an awesome, autonomous, worker-owned and operated collective. I was really happy to do the book with AK. I'll read the first few paragraphs of the preface, and then I'll move to a section from the introduction. So this is the beginning of the book. This is a story about revolutionary deep care, community care that transforms and empowers us from the inside out, through practice and over time. It's the story of an independent abortion clinic, an abortion underground or secretive network, and a clinic defense coalition that were active during some of the years that abortion was legal in all 50 United States. The clinic practiced feminist sexual, reproductive, and abortion healthcare and taught people about body sovereignty, or how to have power in your body and in your life. The underground self-help movement took from the clinic supplies and knowledge about how to provide abortions and seeded them throughout the community. The Clinic Defense Coalition fought to keep the clinic open and defend the community against anti-abortion extremists. I think of them, the clinic, the underground, and the coalition, as a single radical abortion defense movement history, and the lessons this history has to offer couldn't be more urgent today. This next short section is called Learn, Defy, Fight. It's from the introduction of the book. Deep Care braids 3 story threads. A first thread is about the Oakland Feminist Women's Health Center Women's Choice Clinic, for many years part of a network called the Federation of Feminist Women's Health Centers. This thread chronicles the moments in the clinic's near 40-year struggle to keep its doors open and provide feminist abortion and sexual health care. In this thread, I track and theorize the influences of gay women's liberation, the Black Panther Party, and a longer tradition of Black women's health activism and self-help healthcare on clinic politics and philosophies of abortion counseling and abortion work. I tell stories about how this specific clinic transformed how people imagined reproductive healthcare, how, for example, it started the first sperm bank in the country to serve single women and lesbians, as well as the first to offer a donor identity release option, and how the clinic played a critical role in helping to get the abortion pill mifepristone approved in the United States. Throughout this first thread, I explore the participatory clinic model of small group care that distinguished women's choice from mainstream providers. The participatory clinic posited that sexual health care must be a non-hierarchical shared undertaking. A second story thread historicizes the underground gynecological and abortion self-help movement in California's Bay Area, The simple fact that abortion has been practiced intentionally, carefully, holistically, and near constantly by skilled but unlicensed lay people outside of the medical institution, even during years that Roe stood, has not been adequately grasped or theorized. In this thread, I offer stories and analysis of this movement. Drawing on interviews with underground self-helpers, I show how these activists took abortion care into their own hands, learning, practicing, and teaching manual section abortion beyond the walls of the clinic. The work abortion self-helpers did both inside and outside of clinics was complementary and revolutionary. Underground self-help groups in the Bay Area relied on health workers at Women's Choice for access to medical knowledge and supplies. Critically, this thread reveals how these activists, along with health workers at a licensed clinic, together transferred restricted knowledge about gynecology and abortion to lay people. A third story thread chronicles Bay Area abortion defenders' central role in resisting the rise of the Christian rights militant anti-abortion campaigns. In the 1980s and 1990s, the Bay Area Coalition for Reproductive Rights, or BayCor, which included Women's Choice, along with the feminist group Radical Women, the feminist collective Women Against Imperialism, the anti-imperialist group Roots Against War, a loose-knit group of queer anti-fascists, labor organizers, trade unionists, and others, executed a creative, tactically sophisticated, and highly effective clinic defense movement with nationwide reach. Bay Area abortion defenders also trained and led volunteers in clinic escorting over many decades. In my conclusion, I offer some final stories and reflections that respond to a question. What survival lessons do gynecological and abortion self-help and clinic defense offer us today, when reproductive justice and body sovereignty are less a legal reality in the United States than they were a half century ago? As I show, self-helpers and clinic defenders made a world in which intimate knowing of self and of community was both possible and revolutionary. They did so by learning how to provide abortions themselves, defying the law when necessary, and fighting to keep clinics open. As longtime Women's Choice Clinic director Lindsay Comey put it, we did it before and we'll do it again. Thank you.
Before we get into
Yeah, go for it.
I just want to thank Angela for writing this book and doing all the work that she put into long interviews, finding people, right? We're not necessarily, some of us are not easy to find, not so much Radical Women because we have a website, but it's not often enough that we get our history, chronicled and put down in a truthful way. It's something we recognize. So the work that you did with your interviews, with pulling together and how you structured the book is so powerful because it's truth. It's reality. It's what happened. But we don't get to hear those stories. So I just really, buy raffle tickets for sure. But if you don't win the raffle, pick up a copy because it really is about the history of activism, of the radical activists, and the victories that we won, and the things we learned, and the things we taught each other, and how today, the movement today stands on its foundations, which is so important. So, and then Angela, who's someone who's involved in the movement as well. And I think that also gives you that perspective because you understand, because you're doing the work as well. You're not just some academic sitting on the sidelines looking through newspaper articles or whatever kind of stuff. You're talking to people. So I just want to say that, in Freedom Socialist Party, Radical Women, we're just really so thrilled to be a part of this book, and also too to have you here with us to share again more insights. How do we continue the struggle? Because as we know, we're hot in the middle of it.
Thank you, guys. So we can get started with our questions for the panelists today. The first question is, the book highlights the leadership of working class Black women, women of color, and lesbians in the formation of the reproductive justice movement. Why were these individuals and groups specifically motivated to take the risks they did to push the movement forward? Start off with anyone.
Oh,
I
guess I will. Well, if you look at, let's look at the right wing, because of course, we've been having to counter the right wing for so long. And what we know is that their attacks on reproductive justice are rooted in both racism and misogyny. And so the exact individuals and groups who are most affected and who have been most oppressed for so long are the ones who had to step up and say, we're going to fight this, and we're going to fight this hard. There's a clear arc from, the KKK and even further back to the enslavement of Africans, where the right wing has been attempting to control women's bodies, and especially the bodies of Black women. And so when you look at, the ways that we have countered, the revolutionary left has specifically worked so hard to counter the right wing, because we know that these things are so connected. We know there are so many issues. And especially socialist feminists understand there are so many multiple issues that are part of reproductive justice. So, since at least the 60s and even going farther back, we've been working to counter them. And that's why we do it.
Anything to add? A little bit?
Yeah, so the right wing has always gone after women, people of color, LGBTI, because they think we're the weak link. They think that they can make a moral issue out of, these different groupings. And so it's not surprising. They need to be able to control women, right? And one way to control us is to basically control our bodies, decide when and if we're gonna, we don't get to, they're saying you don't get to decide. We're gonna say you have to, unless you're a woman of color. Oh, gee, funny how that is. And then we'll forcibly sterilize you because, we don't need more of your kind, right? So, or if you're poor or if you're disabled, right? It's like they're determining who gets to live and who gets to choose. The other thing too, I want to say, it affects, not just women, but all genders, because if you're with somebody or of somebody who is forced to carry, to have a child that they're not ready for whatever reason, right? There's a million reasons why maybe someone doesn't want to have a child at this exact moment. They should be able to choose. And if your partner or someone doesn't get a choice, then you're also responsible for that child as well, right? Because the state's not going to be responsible for that child, right? The far right who keeps saying, oh, have your child, we'll adopt them. Well, when we are on, clinic defense lines, we would ask those right wingers, have you adopted any children? Oh no, I have a college. I'm going to college right now. I can't adopt, right? So it's sort of like, do as I say, not as I do. The fact that, again, BayCorps, the reproductive justice movement here in the Bay Area, I think because of radical women's influence, as well as the feminism and also the other left feminists, we created something that was so important that lasts today, which is an intersectional movement that says we're not just going to fight for abortion, because back in the day, it was only about abortion. It wasn't about healthcare. It wasn't about forced sterilization. It wasn't about, other things. It just had to be this. We can only talk about, and we're like, no, it's way beyond that. And I think that insight comes from people who understand that life is interconnected. We're not just one oppression, we're multiple oppressions. And I think the other thing that we learned is that we fought to win. We fought to stop things. We didn't fight just to say, oh, well, we tried. The fight wasn't to fight, the fight was to win, because there was so much at stake. And I think that really shaped my political career, activism, because I had an expectation that we fight to win. So when people start trying to sell us out early on, I'm like, well, that's not even a fight. And I think that's really important too, because we need to recognize that we are fighting to win. We're not just fighting to show off or to, we're fighting to say, because there is something we need to win. We have to fight hard in order to win that, and we have to have the sustainability. So it's not for show.
Meredith and Nancy, okay, you just said so much. Like, thank you for, and there's so much here to like potentially unpack and talk more about. I appreciate this question because the question kind of leans into the reproductive justice framework, right? Which was first articulated, first modeled by a group of Black women who in the 1990s were the same Black feminist activists who had kind of come out of and through the self-help movement, right? And that self-help movement, both the gynecological and abortion self-help movement, and also Black women's self-help movement that emphasized talking groups and like essentially something like small group conversation and story sharing as a way to address health inequities. And so it was the kind of earlier self-help movement, which was multiracial and cross-class, that then sort of helped kind of create some of the activists that went on to inaugurate the reproductive justice framework in the 1990s, which is really cool. Like oftentimes the story of reproductive justice is like in the 1990s, 12 Black women came together to articulate, and it was just like, actually, you know, those women had been organizing for decades, right? And it was just like, that was the moment when reproductive justice as a concept was articulated, but that framework was like decades unfolding, right? Okay, so the question is so good. And like, I think the first thing that I want to say is like, in the book, I do look specifically at histories of Black feminist and like lesbian and queer abortion defense and its influences. But the movement was so big. It was cross-class. There were working class women of color, white women. There were also middle-class women who worked with working class women. There were queer folks, genderqueer folks. You know, it was a movement that really looked pretty diverse, kind of like this room, you know, which is really cool. And so I just want to like say that, right? There was just so much kind of collaboration across difference, which is in a lot of ways what I think of as like a central sort of principle of Black feminism, right? Sort of working across difference and coalition. That's something that we learned from Black feminism is necessary to struggle. So that's something that I just want to say that is very profound to me about this kind of local iteration of abortion defense in terms of Bay Area history. You know, the question itself that you asked, like, I want to just mention that Nancy essentially answered it. Like during our very first interview, you were the first person who I sat down with face to face to talk about Baycor. And I remember probably just asking you, like, you know, tell me about Baycor and like, you know, sort of what it came out of in terms of principles and politics. And you just kind of launched into this articulation of like a reproductive justice frame as Baycor understood it. And I was just kind of like, whoa, you know, like it. And, you know, so just appreciating that and like wanting to just mention that, you know, like you have a sort of articulation of an answer to this question that's in the book, thanks to like Nancy being able to just kind of lay it out for me, right? Like the first time we talked. I think for me, one thing that I started to think a lot about as I was doing interviews, not only with clinic defenders, but with lay health workers, folks who worked both at Women's Choice Clinic and also outside of the clinic in the community, is that the reason that people were moved to do this work was oftentimes largely personal, like it came out of lived experience, right? So, you know, many of the people, probably most of the people I interviewed from the book, for the book, had abortions themselves, or who had, you know, experienced discrimination, like in a sort of medical context when seeking prenatal care. You know, many of the women who I talked to at Women's Choice, who had gone to work as lay health workers, you know, had experience like with discrimination and wanted to come to a space that was like explicitly committed to feminist healthcare. So one abortion worker named Alicia Jones, who I interviewed, she was a young working class Black woman who had moved to the San Francisco Bay Area with her young son from Chicago, where she had grown up. And she talked about like how she hadn't had an abortion, but she had just like been treated very poorly when she was first pregnant and seeking prenatal care. You know, basically her doctor was like, why are you here, when she was like 5 months into a pregnancy, you know, like, why are you wanting what do you want from me? You know, and she's just like, I'm here for my prenatal care, right? And this story is in the book, so you can kind of read Alicia in her own words. But, you know, so people who like knew what it felt like to experience barriers to abortion access or reproductive health care, people who had experienced barriers to just like healthy pregnancy, right? And the resources that they needed to give birth and like raise children. And so, you know, they were kind of making it up themselves, like how to create a community and a space in which they could have some of that support and they could have access to the resources that they needed, right? So just listening to people's individual stories about, you know, not only like convictions about the importance of access to abortion care and reproductive health care, sex education, but, you know, also just stories of like individual experiences, accessing care themselves, right? And coming up against some of the barriers to access. So much more to say, but I'll stop there. More to say, but pause for the moment. Yeah, it's such a good question. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So our next question is, what were some of the different political tendencies in the movement for abortion / reproductive rights?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's, well, some of those same tendencies, you know, exist today, and not just for abortion rights or reproductive justice, but for frankly, all the movements, right? Movements are a spectrum of different political ideas, right? So, you know, back in the day, it was the main players were the liberal feminists, like NOW, National Organization for Women, Fund for Feminist Majority, the NARAL, National Abortion Rights Action League. Then after that, there was a lot of NGOs, you know, doing stuff around particular different sort of like racial groups, which, you know, again, all good, but a lot of the thing that was, well, I think misleadership was that many of them were dependent on Democrats. Just go out and elect good Democrats, and you know the courts and the justice system and our legislators will take care of matters. Well, we all see how that turned out. It didn't work. We got sold out. And there was also the issue of we have to be single issue. We can only talk about abortion. We don't want to talk about all the other things because it's too complicated or it gets too messy or we're going to step on people's toes or get into other people's areas. I mean, it was what happened with nonprofits is it became a siphoning of issues. So you had to have one little piece of it. You couldn't really talk about all of it because you're stepping on other people's toes or into other people's, you know, NGO business, as opposed to that's all connected. For us in Radical Men Baycor was we understood it was a profit system that was screwing us, and nobody had any illusions that you know that some mayor or some police officer or some judge was going to, you know, defend us, because it wasn't happening. And in fact, we saw that they were always, you know, when we went to do clinic defense, the cops were sitting there just watching us and letting, you know, Operation Rescue do their thing. They didn't lift a finger, you know, except if, you know, they thought we were going to get out of hand, then we would get arrested. So we knew whose side, you know, it was pretty evident whose side the cops were on. I mean, not that we didn't already know, but if anybody had any sort of, you know, little bit of trust, it's like, well, there you have it. Again, you say the word revolution and revolutionary a lot in your book. And I think that is so important, because if we don't get rid of a system that is set up to exploit us, you know, and depends on us being divided and fighting amongst each other for these little crumbs they sort of send down our way, then, you know, we have to be able to see beyond that and say, we need to do something better. It's not to say we shouldn't fight for things, because we do fight like hell. But we also know that we're not going to stop there, and that ultimately you have to get rid of a system. And I think people are coming around and seeing that now, which is exciting, right? You're seeing the labor movement exploding, where they're going beyond their union presidents, even if they're more sort of like reformist, you know, union presidents who are better than the, you know, the people who've been there, you know, like ancient institutions. I mean, not to be ageist or anything, since I'm a retiree, but, you know, like they got passed down from father, son kind of thing. That they're going beyond, working people are going beyond that and saying it's not good enough just to, you know, elect some better union president. they're saying, we don't want to vote for Biden. We don't want the union to endorse Biden because he's so horrible around Palestine, as well as other things. So I think this is important. We're seeing this qualitative change. And I feel like, what was going back on, during the Bay Corps years was that we were helping to build that level of consciousness, right? It's not, history is not sort of like you do it and then you put it in a box and it's over there and you don't bring it out again. History is a continuum. And the work that Radical Women at the Freedom Socialist Party has been doing for half a century is, again, evidence is that our class, working people, are catching up because the objective material conditions for all of us are so horrible. We know we have to do something, and people are willing to fight, and they like fighters. They appreciate and respect fighters because they want to fight, but they don't necessarily have the confidence or the competence to fight. But now we're getting it, and I think that's why it's also so important the book came out when it did, because it's reflective of a time, and knowing what happened in the past is so important so that we can build on for the present and the future.
I would add that, the work started then with Bay Corps, but it hasn't stopped, like it continues. And so, like, as part of the national mobilization for reproductive justice, we don't look at like a single issue. It isn't just about abortion. There are multiple issues. And so when we talk about building a coalition, we're building solidarity with other groups that, again, aren't just about abortion, but about like guaranteed gender affirming care, right? For trans people, we're talking about repealing the Hyde Amendment, which affects abortion access for poor women. And we're talking about like ending medical and environmental racism. So there are so many issues that are wrapped up in it, and the work didn't stop. We're continuing to build a coalition, which is so exciting and so important, I think. And we've seen it grow. Like, the work doesn't stop, and the bigger it grows, like the closer we are to winning. Like Nancy talked about winning. So yeah.
Yes to everything you both just said. I feel like it's hard to follow that. Researching this book, I'm not an organizer. Like I am trying to really show up and participate as a political theorist, as an activist. But when I started researching this book, like I had no organizing experience, and I maybe have like marginally more now, just because the moment has called for it, right? But I am deeply interested in organizing. Like I'm a historian, right? So the book was an opportunity to really study organizing and tactics, and I learned so much. And I feel like that is part of what the book has to offer, is just like a synthesis of many people's deep knowledge of coalition politics. So some things that I learned a lot about coalition politics. And one thing I learned is that Bay Corps was this just kind of astonishing, rare example of coalition politics working really well. We don't really work in coalition today, I think for all sorts of reasons that are kind of beyond the scope of this panel, but it just seems like, how could we ever make a coalition like Bay Corps work in the year 2024? Like I know that you all are strategizing answers to that question and actively working on it. But it's really hard to get people talking across differences. And often it seems like doing politics in the year 2024 is sort of like looking at the differences and sort of using them to create others, as opposed to trying to figure out how to talk across and sort of bring people in, right? But Bay Corps really did model what coalition politics can work like when done right. So, it wasn't always pretty, like when you had the revolutionary communists in the room and the feminist socialists in the room, and then you had the anarchists, and then you had, labor, you had, just like all sorts of different folks who were coming together to these meetings and getting into conversation about how to stop a bunch of Christian right extremists from, you know, attacking women outside of an abortion clinic, right? Like there was sort of the urgency of the moment that required people, you know, when you have 300 plus people descending upon a clinic where people come to access healthcare, right? Like there was something about the emergency, it seems to me, of those times that really kind of called people, invited, like sort of required them to rise to the occasion and figure out how to work together. But it wasn't always pretty. And like there are some in the chapters about clinic defense accounts of like what it looked like when people weren't getting along, right? Like, you know, when a party, for example, had a certain set of interests that maybe some autonomous or independent folks felt were not necessarily their interests or the interests of the coalition or of the action, right? And so how people sort of negotiated those differences, sometimes effectively, sometimes ineffectively, just, you know, there's so many lessons there for us, right? Like, where were the sort of powerful moments of like coming together around a set of tactics, despite maybe larger political differences or different goals, right? And then like, what did it look like when it sort of broke down and like, what was at stake, you know, like when people weren't able to kind of effectively come together around shared tactics or goals. So I feel like some of those lessons that you all shared through the interviews, like I was able to really register them in the book because people were just like really able to talk about them, right? And I feel like that's sort of part of what we need today are like, you know, we need histories and we need examples of like what was done before, and what that could look like when it was working really well, and also like what it looked like when it didn't work so well, you know, because there are just so many obstacles, I think, to organizing right now, you know, and I think social media, like it certainly helps us spread the word about our actions and connect with the types of people who we want to be connected to, but it also, you know, maybe primarily serves to divide us, you know, and it's just like, well, what do you do, right? I think it's really important to get together in physical space, right? And like have conversations. And that's one thing that feels like an opportunity about like having a book as a sort of organizing instrument, right? Is it is a chance to kind of get together in the room with people and talk across generations and, you know, just differences. So I don't know, I maybe we'll pause there, but yeah, I mean, who was involved, like in the context of clinic defense? Like I said, it was like this socialist feminists, it was the revolutionary communists, it was the anarchists and the anti-fascists, it was the students, right? It was the anti-imperialists. It was youth, right? Like it was a youth-led movement. You know, clinic defense had a lot of folks who weren't like necessarily young, like there were also people in their 30s and 40s and who had like quite a bit of organizing experience, but also a lot of young people, you know. So anyway, it was just an incredibly diverse movement. And I think that you all were able to really like articulate that like in the interviews, you know, like to really name what that looks like and kind of how it felt, right? In the context of those meetings and actions. So
One thing you said,
Yeah.
which I think is, I just want to touch on, which
Yeah.
is two things. One thing that kept us together, even though we didn't agree on everything, was that there was strong leadership. And we were clear on what we wanted. We had a set of demands or a general idea that we were putting forth. And again, because we were successful, which frankly goes a long way, that people were willing to follow that because it was successful. We were doing the right thing. And if they didn't want to, that's fine. You don't have to participate in that way. We would have to, there were times we asked people to leave the clinics because they just wanted to get in a fight. It's like, we weren't there to get in a fight with the right wing in that way. We were there to, you know, make sure that people got into the clinic. And so if they just wanted to be much about it, bye-bye, you know. The other thing is, so strong leadership and leadership that could be trusted. And then in terms of organizing, we focus so much on the differences and not enough on the similarities. I mean, we are all being exploited by capitalism. That in and of itself puts a lot of people in the room. But as we know, capitalism is quite adept at saying, well, yeah, maybe, but you're not as much as that person. And actually they're the problem, not the system. And, you know, that's a bazillion-dollar industry propaganda machine that teaches us all these things. So again, I think by having a revolutionary program, again, recognizing, just putting it out there, it's not an elephant. The elephant is not in the room, because the elephant is like, it's not an elephant anymore. It's just a given. I don't know what the anyway, I didn't know where to go with that, but anyway, it's, you know, we understand we're up against something bigger than just, you know, whether, you know, I like your eyeglasses or you're, you know, whatever. It's just, it's not petty, because also too, the stakes were so high. The stakes were high, and people understood that, and the people who were involved in providing these services and defending, we understood. I mean, I was 20 something years old. I mean, I don't really, what do you know when you're 20 something years old? I mean, you don't exactly know serious. I mean, right? But somehow you just knew it was important, and you just did it, right? You got up early in the morning. I hate the mornings, you know, to go out and, you know, defend a clinic. And you did it because, well, it was fun, sure, but really there was more. I mean, you know, fun wears off quite quickly, especially at 6 o'clock in the morning. But somehow you just knew, right? It was important, and we were doing something important. And I think that's what people have to understand about activism, about leadership, is we're doing it not because we've got nothing better to do, but we're making a difference. We're standing up, we're struggling, we're fighting back. And that's, I wholeheartedly believe people want to fight. They just don't know exactly how or what's the best way. And they also want to be, you know, successful. So they don't want to waste their time. So again, the more we learn about activism, the more we hone our own leadership abilities, the more we have a program that says, okay, A, B, C, D, how do we bring people in? It doesn't, just because we say a bunch of stuff doesn't mean we're actually excluding people, right? And that's how this weird logic works. If you say women, you're somehow excluding men. I mean, where does it say we're excluding men? Does it say? Please point it out to me, because I don't see it, right? So I think, again, you know, people nowadays, again, because they realize that way doesn't work anymore. Identity politics, there's something about pride, but identity politics in and of itself is not, you know, I've been screwed over by my own people, right? And so I don't trust my own people, because, you know, and my own people are lots of different people, but I don't trust them in that way, because, you know, it's like, where do you stand ultimately? And you can screw me over just as worse, right? Because you're one of my own, right?
Yeah. Can I ask you a follow-up question?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think enabled people involved in radical abortion defense, clinic defense, to trust each other despite perceived or real differences, just despite all the barriers to trust in the context of like a high stakes political engagement or action, you know, because it's one of the things that like was so striking to me in the course of researching the book, was just like how people today spoke so lovingly and trustingly of each other, right? Like it's clear that you all really trusted each other. You know, maybe you didn't even always like each other that much, but you really trusted each other, and you did very intense things together with your bodies. You know, whether if you were doing underground lay healthcare and you were, you know, learning how to do suction abortion, right? Like in a bedroom with your self-help group, or whether you were using your body to like lift other bodies over protesters into a clinic, right? Like, how did you get to a place where you had that kind of trust in each other, you know? Especially I feel like some of those lessons are so important to us today when there's so many barriers to trust, you know? It's like, oftentimes you don't even know, like, are you talking to a real person, or just like, I don't know, some artifice, like some version of a person that's their brand on social media, or, you know, like,
Oh, we didn't
but
have
there was
social
such,
media back
there,
then.
you know, there was just like such authenticity of relation and like political engagement. And I wonder, like, how did you get there? And what do you think were some of the variables that kind of facilitated that level of trust, you know?
The proof is in the pudding. You do, and then if who's there,
Mhm.
right? If they're doing what we all say we're gonna do, and there's your trust.
Yeah.
If you're not doing it, then of course there goes the trust. I think you also have to kind of go in, maybe not super skeptical about people, because then we always have reasons why we can
Yeah.
point and say, oh, that person did this back in the day, you know? So it's, we're all in agreement. We're all gonna do this. You do it, okay, right? You're cool. I mean, there's, yeah.
So it had to do with the doing somehow.
And doing
Like-
it like how, I mean, not like exactly like us, but you like said, okay, we're gonna do clinic offense.
Yeah.
This is your role, you know, everybody, and they did their role. And it's like, it's okay, it's
Uh-huh.
cool, right?
Uh-huh.
And there's something about being in battle together that builds that trust. I think that's the other thing. It's like, if you are linking arms together and, you know, preventing the right wing from closing the clinic, you know, that is a physical, you know, mental, emotional, whatever kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, you were right next to me. I'm like, I respect you, you know, I don't even have to know you. But I find that true with every battle, right? It's like in union battles, it's like, you don't have to like your coworker, but if they're willing to go out on strike, fine, you know? I run into people now from like, you know, decades ago who I don't really know, but like we were in battle together. And it's like, oh, I remember your name. Like, I don't even know some of my old housemates. I haven't even lived in that many places. Housemates' names who I live with, I don't even remember their names. But yet people who I was in some kind of struggle with, you know, hi, Aaron Wong, right? I mean, you know, it's literally that I remember because you were there. Yeah, it's just kind of, it feels so simple, I guess.
I remember because you.
You guys, that was great. So our final question is, what can people do to get involved with and build the movement for reproductive justice?
I can answer that. Actually, so you and everyone here actually, and everyone on Zoom who we're so grateful to have as part of this, can get involved with the National Mobilization for Reproductive Justice. And we have done so many things, and I know there were things that we did before I was part of the we, but fortunately, we have also done a whole lot since I became part of the we. And, you know, you can come to our meetings, which are the first and third Thursdays of each month at 6:30 p.m. on Zoom. Makes it very accessible. Even if you're on BART, you can just be on your Zoom on your phone, which I know would be fantastic, but you know. So some of the things that we have done, just to give you an idea of like how much important work we have been doing, you know, we have protested the overturning of Roe versus Wade. We annually protest or counter protest the West Coast Walk for Life here in San Francisco. We've done that very successfully. We have confronted the fascists like right there, and we have done it safely. We have protested the suspension of FDA authorization of mifepristone, which is one of the 2 abortion medications that is used. We have stood up to the right-wing trans exclusionary women who call themselves feminists, also known as TERFs, but I don't like to give that to them. And we actually have an event coming up next weekend, so timely. And I'll show you the flyer. We are holding a rally and information fair, and we are telling the Supreme Court to keep their hands off the abortion pill. And we want them to uphold the FDA authorization of this safe abortion medication. You know, it's been approved, mifepristone has been approved for use in medication abortion since the year 2000. And the fact that, you know, there were some studies initiated by right-wing anti-abortion think tanks that showed supposedly that it wasn't safe. And those studies have since been retracted. Like that in itself should tell you that this is a safe medication. And so we will not stand for the Supreme Court denying us our right to use that as part of safe abortion. And sorry, I'm just like, I'm going now. But you know, medication abortion is so important because more people can access it. Like, it is much more accessible. You can get it by mail, like you can get it with a doctor prescription, but you don't have to go to a place. And for so many people, you know, more counties, I think in California itself, have a crisis pregnancy center, which is anti-abortion, but tries to present itself as healthcare, than have actual reproductive healthcare, whether that's to do with abortion or whether it's to do with like prenatal care. So, you know, we need this medication. We know that they are, you know, what's next? Like, they're going to try to get rid of hormonal contraception. They are already conflating mifepristone with contraception. It's like ridiculous. It's egregious. So again, we are having this fantastic event. It's Sunday, March 24th from noon to 1:30 p.m. It is in front of the San Francisco Federal Building at 97th Street. And so that's 7th and Mission. I'm impressed because I'm an out-of-towner, but I know that. And it's organized by the National Move, which is us, and the Raging Grannies League, Freedom Socialist Party, and Radical Women. And we have ASL interpreters lined up, and it is wheelchair accessible. So, you know, get a hold of us, invite your friends, invite your family, invite your neighbors, and join us.
Another project, in addition to all the many marches and rallies and protests that we've been doing, is the National Mobilization is involved in a campaign to get Liz Schuler, who's the head of the AFL-CIO, which is a sort of umbrella organization of most unions in the United States, to call for an emergency conference to fight for come up with a labor response to fighting for reproductive justice. We've gotten the National Coalition for Labor Union Women on board. They're co-sponsoring a press conference that we're doing in June, announcing, you know, that we're turning in this letter to Liz Schuler. We've gotten quite a few union endorsements, including my union, ASME Council 57, which gave $1,000. They said they wanted to make a statement. And so they said, I think $1,000 to the National Mobilization will make a statement. And I'm like, yes, we agree. Anyway, so we're in the process of getting union to follow up, writing a letter to her. And then also on your, where you're sitting, there's a white half sheet. Particularly if you're a union member, scan the code, the QR code, and you can sign the letter. Also, if you think that maybe, you know, your union, somebody in your union, or if your union itself, we have materials to get unions to pass a resolution. So you can talk to me afterwards. And then just also a plug for FSP, Freedom Socialist Party. Again, we're heavily involved in the National Mobilization, but if people are interested in learning more about Freedom Socialist Party and are ready to join a revolutionary feminist vanguard party, come see me afterwards.
Yes to everything that you two just said. I think, you know, like, I just want to like recognize how important this organizing that the coalition is doing right now is. Like, you all are holding rallies at a time when like not a lot of other groups are taking that initiative. Like, you're kind of the group that's doing that organizing locally, right? And so it, you know, it gives people an opportunity to put their body out there. It creates visibility for the resistance, for the issues, right? You all, I think, you know, because you have kind of like the sort of organizing infrastructure and the party, like you're sort of able to do some of that narrative work, like articulating points of unity and kind of like intersectional approaches to reproductive rights and reproductive justice. So like, you know, big appreciation for that work that you're doing, you know, and like it gets also, you know, it gets the struggle into the media, and like I am the media, like I'm not like, you know, I'm this kind of media, like big clunky book that takes 5+ years to write media, but even so, like it's radical women-led actions in the present that bookend the book, right? Like there's a radical women event that was a rally organized around the time of the hearings in the Dobbs case before the decision came down in 2021 that sort of opens the book. And then at the end of the book, there's a narrative part about the Walk for Life counter demonstration, right? Which was also, there were a few different groups involved, but radical women did a lot to kind of organize that. So just to say, like it's powerful, right? Because then those actions like create visibility, and then they get not only into the news, but they get into books, right? And then that's how you ensure the sort of transmission of those historical insights and knowledge. So just kind of like a historian's take on why this work is significant. It's about like right now and also the future, you know, and like, yeah. I think, you know, getting out there and participating, whether you're doing organizing work, whether you're just putting your body out there, like getting out into physical space, you know, and participating in struggle is certainly one way. I think, you know, this mifepristone case is really, as you were saying, Meredith, like the sort of significance of it is hard to kind of wrap your head around. Because as I understand it, what the Supreme Court has, I mean, they can do a lot of different things, but one thing that it seems that they are very likely to do is basically reverse the, send the sort of laws governing prescription and use of mifepristone back to before 2016. So essentially eradicating telehealth abortion care. Right. So that would mean that if you want to obtain your abortion pills legally, you would have to go into a physical clinic. You can no longer obtain them via telehealth, which is how so many people are getting their abortion pills right now. Yep. You know, we've seen the closure of more than 100, like something like 140 clinics in just these last handful of years. That's 140 some clinics that people now can't go to get abortion pills, not to mention in clinic or surgical procedures. You know, and then also the Supreme Court can decide that, you know, mifepristone and misoprostol abortion with pills has to be done by an earlier week of pregnancy, right? They're probably going to, I think it's something like 10 weeks. The FDA has approved back to 7 or something like that. So don't quote me, double check the numbers. But, you know, so even if the Supreme Court doesn't hold mifepristone from the market, which I don't know. I mean, I'm not a legal scholar, but it seems unlikely that they would do that. But it does seem like very, very possible that they will reverse the kind of laws and whatnot around how mifepristone can be prescribed. So it's a big deal and an important moment to be organizing. I think in terms of other ways that people can participate in the struggle right now, certainly just sort of self-educating and grasping the importance of being someone with good knowledge that you can share with friends and family locally in banned states, right? You know, it's really important for people to know how they can access abortion pills, even if they don't have a doctor's prescription. PlanCpills.org is an information campaign that hosts a website that is, as of the moment, like kind of the center. It's kind of the central place that people can go to learn about how to access pills. From anywhere in the United States. And fortunately, at the present moment, because of shield laws, this wasn't even the case as far as I know, like maybe 6 months ago, but you can order your abortion pills online and have that prescription made and then fulfilled from within the United States. A lot of providers in like Massachusetts, for example, who are protected by shield laws are now mailing abortion pills to people in banned states. Not so long ago, it was the case that, you know, you could have a service like aid access, fulfill a prescription for you. But if you were in a banned state, then those pills would come from India, right? So it would take several weeks for them to get to your door. So it's a really big deal that now from anywhere in the United States, people can obtain pills from within the country. That is also threatened by this current Supreme Court case. But directing people to like plancpills.org as a central kind of hub for information about accessing abortion with pills, and also like helping educate people around the importance of defending clinics, right? Because once again, you know, those clinics are really the bottom line. Like, you know, that's where people can access abortion with pills, and also in clinic procedures, later abortion care. Independent clinics offer pretty much all later abortion care in this country at this point, and independent clinics are closing rapidly. So, you know, there's also education campaigns about the importance of defending independent clinics. Keep Our Clinics is a campaign that is doing this work. And so that's a campaign that I've been trying to kind of uphold as I've been traveling around and talking to people about the book. There's a little zine called If We Can Do This by Cindy Crabb, who's a zinester from the 90s who did Doris. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but it's a zine about learning how to do menstrual extraction. And Cindy collaborated with me. She created this totally beautiful piece, and I brought a few, and if you want to make like a little monetary donation, that will go to Keep Our Clinics. And then you can take one of these like special kind of limited edition zines with you. I should also mention that there are books for sale, and they are, their retail price is $24, but $4 of that $24 will go directly to FSP today. So if you want to take a book to give as a gift, even if you already have one, like you're also supporting this organization, in addition to like AK Press, the beloved AK Press that is publishing radical literature. So consider picking up a book today. It's just a little side plug. Okay, so right, like getting good information to educate yourself, educating others about abortion access, and like putting your body out there. I think those are some great ways to like further the struggle today, you know.
Well, thank you guys so much for the wonderful discussion. We have time for quick closing comments from speakers. So if you guys have any closing comments.
Or if you want to make them after the discussion, maybe we should do that. We're running a bit.
Yeah, or after the discussion. Okay, let's do that. All right, so now I'm gonna hand it over to Nelly real quick for the fun pitch.
We go over here. Okay.
And take your mask.
Oh, take my mask off. Well, you don't really want to. Yes, okay, I'll do that. Hello, everyone, and it's just been an amazing panel discussion for the fight for reproductive justice, and unfortunately, under the capitalist system, we got to pay for using this space. And we do have to have money to organize in the movements. And just as you heard from our panelists today, all the actions and all the work that goes behind the action takes money. So I'm here to ask for your support of the New Valencia Hall, as well as the organizations that use it. That's the Freedom Socialist Party and Radical Women, and for the many, many community gatherings that we have here at Polk in the Tenderloin. So we would appreciate very much your opening up your pocket. Cash is welcome, no Bitcoins, cash, a check, or through PayPal. Any donation that you would like to make, $5, $50, you know, 1,000 if you have it. I mean, I'm gonna put some out myself, what I can, to help continue our organizing work, which is very important. And I think one thing that many people aren't aware of, what it takes to organize, whether you need ink, copy machines, cell phones, computers, and people to clean the place. All those many, many things are a part of what we do as activists and as
working people. So please help us so we can continue to fight together. Thank you.
Thank you, Nellie. Okay, we're gonna open it up now to everybody here. If anybody has any questions or things they want to discuss, I'll open the floor. Yes, there.
Oh,
So I was looking at the website for the National Mobilization for Reproductive Justice. And it has a lot of, very broad, very powerful demands like overturn state barriers to reproductive choices, stop forced sterilization, educate kids and forced assimilation, and no child welfare abuses, and medical environmental racism, and for universal healthcare. I mean, a lot of these very, very deep, very broad demands. And I was wondering, I wanted to ask the speakers if they think that any of these demands are possible under capitalism.
I think the short answer is no. That's the succinct answer. And so I think that's part of why our, the socialist feminism specifically is so important to achieving reproductive justice, because we're not looking at a single issue. We're not looking at a single set of people. We're looking at so many issues and so many people that it affects. And it affects all of us because of capitalism. Like, we are the people who are most marginalized under capitalism. So really, we just got to get rid of it.
I mean, I think that's true. I absolutely. I also just want to recognize that organizing and coalition work plays an important role in accountability and demanding accountability of the states. And sometimes that accountability, it's not that much, right? Like, maybe reparations don't actually amount to that much, but that doesn't mean that they're not meaningful, right? Like an organization that on the issue of sterilization and coercive sterilization, right? An organization that is doing really incredible work and has done incredible work historically is the California Coalition for Women Prisoners.
Yeah.
And basically what that organization is, a health justice organization that grew out of the need to demand accountability around coercive sterilization of people in women's prisons in California. And they were able to, through long game organizing and sort of, creating, gathering data and creating reports on, documented cases of coercive sterilization of incarcerated women, they were able to, basically advocate for new legislation that granted some reparations to people who experienced coercive sterilization while incarcerated, right? And so some people have received monetary compensation for that injustice. And again, these are sort of actions that require working with the law to an extent, right? And yet it's still very powerful in terms of recognizing just people's dignity inside of their lives, right? And that shouldn't have happened to you. That was an injustice, right? And we're going to hold the state accountable and demand that be sort of formally recognized, right? And I think oftentimes these types of projects, right? These sort of accountability projects that aren't necessarily I mean, some people might say that's not revolutionary, that's not abolitionist, right? I mean, California Coalition for Women Prisoners does they are an abolitionist organization, and yet they also do a lot of work with the legislature, right? And just in terms of creating new legislation and seeing that passed. In the process, people get educated about the issues, right? Coercive sterilization is underrepresented within the reproductive rights and reproductive justice sort of discourse, even today. And I think that, people learn a lot about contexts in which coercive sterilization happens and like how it happens and to whom it happens to, right? Like in the process of doing research and you know, advocating for laws and reparations. So just want to say that I think that there's like a role for all of these types of organizing projects that help bring us closer to justice, to reproductive justice. You know, and can be abolitionist and deeply anti-capitalist in their orientation, right? So like I'm hopeful, right, that we can still take meaningful action along the way to the overturning of capitalism. Yeah.
Okay, I think we have a hand up on Zoom. Christine?
Good day, everyone. Thank you so much for this wonderful.
Hold on.
Okay. There we go. Hi. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentations and conversation. I related to a talk I heard on the radio about a week ago. I failed to get the name of this professor, this history professor, but he was saying that the reason the right wing is so on the rise in this period and they are attacking women's rights is because our work as activists has seeded it. They are afraid of us. More and more people are, you know, joining the ranks intersectionally, you know, multi-issue, working together to support communities and each other's causes. And because of that, that is why the right wing is putting forth more and more actions to counter us. So we're doing the right thing. And thank you for being leaders in this and keep going. Let's keep pushing even harder and stop these cruel, insensitive people from trying to control our lives. Thank you.
Another online person who hand up. Did you have your hand up? Yeah.
Firstly, I just want to say thank you so much because you know I 45 years ago I was sitting in the rooms like this in Mozambique, and I've been in America for 40 years. I never thought I would hear this because I was one of those people who thought the fight is over and gave up and on. And but now an injury for one brother is the injury. And it started attacking on the board. When I came to this room the other day, when I met my sister, I said, you know, it's not for men, for women, for all of us. It's amazing. The so-called pro-lifers, they are now doing the same situation now. I was born in South Africa. I spent 10 years in prison in South Africa, about 2 years with Nelson Mandela. But that is not the issue. The issue is my older daughter, she's in her mouth now, she's a doctor. The doctors were done about it. In Uganda, you could be arrested, your family can be killed if they thought you had abortion, or if they thought one of your family members case. And it started from the so-called pro-life. It's amazing how these people, they are moving and doing all this at free will because we think we don't have power. I like that statement about we are winning. When you're winning, you don't sit down and say, oh, I won, let me just count my winning. You must continue to fight forward and ahead. But I'm so, you don't know how proud I am about you guys. Because this affects everything, you know, women's rights, they're suffering. Is it not amazing how the bodies attacked? The body, the symbolic attacking the bodies that every time there's been a freedom in any country such as in Mozambique, someone will come and support this other group to stabilize. Now they said you are free. There is no freedom because we have got so many bombs where you cannot even clap, you cannot even do anything. The women are being killed from left and right. Is it not affecting how the minority, especially the women, are the one who have to suffer because men are so afraid of women? We are so foolish because if we're to embrace and show them love to the undermined people of the world, you guys, things will be better. I'm so proud of you. And I apologize that I've been sitting on the sideline until I realize I live in this country. Capitalism, we cannot let it win because we're paying the price. Yes, so try it. Thank you.
Okay, on Zoom, we have Eves, and then Amy.
Hi, everybody. My name is Eve, he, they pronouns. Thank you so much for this discussion today. I was so grateful to learn so much from all of you. I just wanted to make sure that I just wanted to highlight some issues that transmasculine folks face when it comes to abortion access. As a transgender man on birth control, I'm lucky to have that. But it's also not to say that, like, when I go to the gynecologist at the general hospital, I get a lot of issues, a lot of looks. It's very difficult for me to be respected. But also I wanted to say, 13% of transmasculine folk, when we try and access, like anything related to contraception or abortion access, like 13% of us are denied by our insurance providers, right? And also, it's the statistic that 1 in 5 transmasculine folk, non-binary folk, we are doing abortions without supervision, like any kind of healthcare provider supervision. Whereas cis women, that's 1 in 15. So I just wanted to, I guess, highlight and that trans rights are inextricable from abortion rights and vice versa. And just to bring that to the discussion today. Thank you.
Yeah. Amy?
Thanks. I'm Amy. I work with a barrier for the Socialist Party here, and I thank you for the international perspective.
Yes.
I mean, the connections, it's stark, right? The fight is so life or death right now. But there's a boxer in the ring that, like, all my money's on, like, this multi-issue, multi-gender, multi-racial coalition is, somebody just said they're afraid of it. Christine, it's so powerful. And what Eve's just said, I mean, the connections need to be all the way international, but from the grassroots. And I can't get over, I mean, Nancy, you talked about the National Coalition for Reproductive Justice getting the Coalition of Union Women to have a press conference. I mean, I'm sorry, but speaking objectively, that's not a perfect tradeswomen's union organization for women. I can tell you, as somebody in a non-traditional trade, I'm a union plumber. That took a lot. That took, pushing from the grassroots to get them to do that. And then to get all these labor unions to sign on, that's grassroots activists. I'm looking at Drew. I mean, I'm looking at people, rank and filers in our organizations, in our unions, pushing upward. And I guess I have a little bit of a question. What does that mean? I guess Angela, as much as you might be able to, but I know Meredith and Nancy as labor activists in their unions, especially, what does it mean? I mean, people that I see, sometimes I see SEIU, I see unions taking up causes, which is critical, but there's something happening where it's not labor bureaucrats saying we're going to do this. It's saying, hey, this is what we're doing to the bureaucrats, and if they'll come along, we'll pull them. But there's something about who's driving this, and I just wonder if you could say something about that, because to me, that's the source of our power in this movement. Because we're not limited. We're not excluding trans folks. We are trans folks. That's who's doing it. We're not excluding the international perspective, the immigrant perspective. So I just wonder if there's anything more that you want to say about that, because that is incredibly striking to me in this presentation.
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay, great. We'll take another question before we answer that. Christina?
All right, first off, I want to thank you for writing this book. I am very excited to read it because, as Nancy said, the point is, the character of the leadership. And so, I am also part of the Reproductive Justice San Francisco Coalition. And, something that I have seen is that, we've been providing that principled leadership by having those inclusive demands, by trying to get people out into the streets and, you know, like you said, trying to get people out and, you know, out together and in person. You know, the Roe overturn was incredible, and like I was emceeing and there was just like a sea of people. We laid down in the middle of the street. But, you know, just from, you know, all of your perspectives, you know, how do we drag the nonprofit industrial complex and service providers along? And how do we inspire people to, you know, come and make their voices heard? And just one more thing, thank you all for focusing on what we can do. Because I think often, you know, kind of liberal sort of tendencies will just be like, oh, well, we can't do this, it'll, you know, make these people sad, we can't do this, it's gonna turn off these people. And so thank you for the focus on what can be done and what must be done.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question, and I think Norma has her hand up. So, Norma, if you want to speak, and then closing comments from our panelists. Yeah, and answer the questions. Yeah.
Hey everyone. Hey everyone. I had been sick. I'm Norma. I'm with Radical Women, and I absolutely am enthralled. I can't. Everyone's Angela. The book is amazing. It is a refreshing.
So I'm glad you like it.
Well, being a part of it, you know, even in the beginning, the introduction saying that route where, I won't say too much, but just enough to just say that myself having gone to Mississippi in 2006, when Operation, and it's in the book, Operation Save America was attacking the pink clinic, and this is you know, a while back, where Black feminists asked radical men and anyone around the country to come out and protest the far right abortion rights, abortion anti-abortionists of the Operation Save America. And I cannot stress the program of fighting multiracially in the South when it's such a police state, when right now there is if it's worse, if everyone's upset and feeling bad about it here in California, it's absolutely worse in the South. But the fight back, the amount of people that came out and are organizing against these soft but fascistic elements of the far right, coming out and saying you're all about spreading, you know, a program that isn't for us. Everyone came out and booted them out of town within 5 days of their coming to town. And I just wanted to say that a lot of what you have in this book, you know, from the showing how to do it in so many facets, I think that continuing this the way that we've been doing, you know, and having worked with comrades in this work for so long, we got to keep going. So Meredith brought up so many times, well, I wouldn't say so many times, but come out to March 24th next weekend, everyone, because, and bring people. I think that this is just an opportunity for us to continue to show how exciting it is to be on the right side of history, to be fighting for not just these issues for abortion rights, but for everything that we're trying to you know, intersect at this point. So get out there, join us. But I just want to say how this book, it's an honor to not individually be a part of it, but to collectively seeing the work that we've done. And I just wanted to say that. So
Norma.
Yeah. Thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, so much deep appreciation to radical women for being such a major player in abortion defense in the Bay Area.
So if panelists would like to answer the questions that were brought up and also do some closing remarks.
Yeah, so Amy's question about organized labor. Less than 5 years ago, organized labor wouldn't take a stand for abortion rights. It was too divisive. Right? And, I belong to AFSCME, which is a public employee union, and they were all worried about the prison guards, like, getting upset because we took a stand for abortion. Like, the prison guards, I'm sorry, are a small minority of what AFSCME, which is 1 million+ people. And, it's just an excuse to say why we don't. But I think because of everything that happens from Black Lives Matter to what's happening in Palestine, to, the attacks on working people, here and internationally. And also, because union members are sick and tired of just feeling like they have to walk in step to whatever the union bureaucrats say. And they're just saying, we're going beyond you, literally beyond you. And I think that's what's so exciting about this movement. It's like, they're not just stopping at some little reform that that we're like, oh, well, gee, that's really different. They're more progressive than they were, but which isn't saying much. Union members are like, screw you, we're going above you and beyond you. And that is the nature, right? That's why this period is so exciting, that people are understanding that we need more than just, reforms. We really do understand we have to fight like hell for reforms, but we also have to understand we got to get rid of the system. You can't get rid of the prison industrial complex or, by just reforming it. You can't reform capitalism by electing nice people, right? It doesn't work that way. You got to literally get rid of it and replace it with something. We're not talking just totally, wipe it out and then free for all. No, we're saying have a planned economy, right? And look to people for providing for people's needs. So I think it is a sign of the time. National Clue, that's a pretty big deal, that a grassroots coalition of people throughout the country that includes a lot of trade unionists who are pushing their unions, and the unions are going along because it's like, also too, with the overturn of Roe, labor does know that, labor has known it's under attack, but it itself hasn't wanted to stand up. So one last push, we'll see what we can do, but it's a sign of the times, and that's what is good, is that people have woken up, they've been aware, they've been conscious, and they just need to find other people to work with, right? Because otherwise we can get demoralized. I also wanted to thank Yves for talking about trans folks and how important they are to the movement. Because when you look at who is under attack right now, trans kids, I'm like, what? Like hundreds of bills against trans children. Like, what are they doing? Nothing. They're being trans children. But that is such a threat. Women being able and people being able to control their bodies is such a threat, because that gives us some sense of control over our lives, and we're taking it back. And I think that it is. Christine is absolutely right. It is. They're frightened of us. They thought that they could, poke at us and just squash us, but we're all rising up and we're providing leadership, and we're saying, this is who we are. And this is, we don't even care if you accept us or not. You're not going to silence us. And we're fighting. And I think, again, people want that fighting spirit, and they want that leadership, and that leadership is coming from folks who understand so clearly why we have to fight, because there is no other choice. And they also have a vision of what needs to be changed, because society has, purposely, treated them in certain ways to make them feel meaningless and insignificant and powerless.
For sure. I also wanted to touch on, thank you for sharing with us about, your time in prison. And, it's so powerful to think about you know, nationally, we're constantly thinking nationally, but how international like reproductive justice is. And, you know, Palestine, like what's happening in Palestine is a reproductive justice issue. And so really thinking beyond the scope of like, okay, things are, you know, more or less okay in California, but we're not in a silo. Like we are either all liberated or none of us are liberated. And I know I'm badly paraphrasing, but there is so much work to be done, and we have to look at all of the people who are being marginalized and oppressed nationally and internationally. And there are things that you can do, like it's not too late to get involved, and there are different ways that you can get involved and levels of involvement. You know, by showing up to rallies and events, by helping with organizing tasks. Like there are little tasks and there are bigger tasks, but it's all important. Like it all has to be done. So, you know, as a parent, there was a time when I was like, I can't do anything because I have this little child, and like, they're a lot anyway. I can't do stuff on top of that. But I think had there been like an organization or a coalition available where I knew like, okay, you can do this like small thing, this small important thing, that I probably would have gotten involved. So I encourage anybody who's like, well, it's just too much, like I can't make that commitment. We can give you like small things that are also important parts of organizing. Like it all has to be done.
Maybe I'll just do like a few scattered comments, reiterations of things that have already been said. Again, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this panel. It's such an honor to be on the panel with Meredith and Nancy. And I appreciate your interest in and like attention to the book. It means a lot. So one that to sort of go back to some of the comments that were made around, you know, sort of the apartheid state and tracking reproductive justice struggles transnationally. I was thinking of Audre Lorde and some of her analysis late in her life around the apartheid state, apartheid logics, and like what she called the cancer industry. You know, she really thought of the structure, the sort of cancer industry as structural and as operating as a kind of apartheid, right? And I don't want to like misquote or mischaracterize the argument, but she looked at those connections, right, between apartheid and health and justice. And I think, you know, those are powerful connections, you know, and just kind of being the importance. Another thing that I learned a lot about in researching this book was the importance of being an internationalist when learning about studying, wrapping one's head around participating in reproductive justice struggles, right? These are international struggles, and we have to think like internationalists to really be effective in our politics. So just to kind of like return to that, some of the insights that you were offering. The question of what to do about the non-profitization of radical politics and sort of like, I don't know the answer. I'm not like an organizer, but as a historian, like I just find that question really provocative and powerful. Like so many people I talk to about politics in the Bay Area, like wrestle with this question, right? Like everything is getting so non-profitized, right? And, you know, there's all, and, you know, nonprofits are like corporations in some ways, and nonprofits do great work. Like, you know, I mean, PlanCpills.org is a nonprofit organization, Abortion Care Network is a nonprofit organization, right? Critical Resistance, Anti-Police Terror Project, you know, like it goes on and on and on. Like these are all nonprofit organizations and doing outstanding work locally and nationally, internationally. But you know, there are also challenges that come with a non-profitized sort of political landscape. So I don't know the answer, but just want to like underscore the question because it just really sort of made me sort of feel some things. What else? So much has been said. I feel like there were a few other little threads that I wanted to go back to, but yeah, I think I'm thinking a little bit about like what Fred Moten and Stefano Harney call the undercommons, which is kind of like a political orientation or strategy of figuring out how to like work with available sources and do organizing from underneath, right? Like the structures, right? Like being able to figure out how to work subversively, like sort of while you're inside of, which is a kind of revolutionary orientation all along the way to revolution. And I feel like, you know, just for example, writing radical feminist movements into history and then figuring out how to get that history into the hands of folks outside of like radical left organizing spaces is like something that I feel is important, right? Like how do we take the knowledge and disseminate it beyond like kind of like what can sometimes feel like a sort of left elite, like in the Bay Area, right? Like we can get into a room together and sort of be on the same page about a whole bunch of stuff, but how do we sort of get the knowledge and the lessons like out into like the more kind of mainstream, like liberal society, you know, and maybe there's some answers there about like what to do about nonprofitization, right? Like how to work with some of the like resources that nonprofits have available. I don't know, you know, like, you know, if you want to like do coalition building, right? We've been talking about the need for resources just to sort of make things happen. So all of that, like just what are some strategies for subversive revolutionary activity, you know, and how are we already doing subversive revolutionary things, you know, like right now, along the way to revolution. You know, those are the big questions, I think, for me. But thank you again so much for having me here today. It's just been such a privilege to talk with you all and happy to hang out and talk more afterward and sign books and all of that. I don't know, any more comments from you two? Like last words of inspiration?
You know, well, maybe not, hopefully. On the nonprofit thing, right? I think it's kind of like the unions. It's like, if there is a movement that is pushing and has enough momentum, the other people have to change. You know, the union bureaucrats have to change, the nonprofits, because they derive their power from us, right? And if we're not giving them much resistance, then they just get to go along their merry way and do stuff. Also with the nonprofits, we know that they're stuck. Well, they choose to be where you don't bite the hand that feeds you. Right, that's why we're not a nonprofit, because we bite lots of hands. Because we have to, and we don't care, we're not driven by that, right? So I think there's that. So, you know, as the times change, they're also, I mean, we've been in this rightward shift over decades, right? But again, we're moving in a different direction. And like, I think, you know, the fact that the unions have to take a stand on reproductive justice and that seemed practically overnight, that we're in that level of consciousness is there. And we're just trying to create the critical mass of it, where it's like, boom, you know, that people say, yeah, and suddenly we're all on the same page. And then just in terms of, I understand what you're saying about subversive revolutionaries. We're like bold and like out there because we're proud of being socialist feminists. And we also know we have a proposed solution. We think that you need to have revolution, and we have been forced to be quiet so long, right? And there's so much I mean, like the Congress comes out being anti-socialist, right? It's like, oh, we must be doing the right thing, right? It's like, this is good. This is a good sign. I mean, we're going to have our antennas up and just be aware that, you know, stuff's coming down, or has, you know, it is coming down, is already happening, but we are trying to change the narrative, right? Because they have the propaganda machine that says all these people, all these groupings of people, all these kind of political ideologies or left ideologies is horrible. So let's take advantage, right? Because this is the window of opportunity we have perhaps in our lifetime. And we want to make the most of it, because another opportunity like this is not going to come around. And in fact, if we don't take advantage of it, the consequence is the window shuts and we lose the opportunity, and fascism takes over. We don't have fascism yet. We couldn't be sitting here if there was fascism. We want to do everything in our power to not make that happen, so that we can continue to fight. You know, and reforms are part of it, but we're also recognizing you got to be broader than just these little piddly little reforms. And then to educate, You know, people have heard this story many times, some of my comrades, but my mother used to like to play the slot machines. She used to say, cherries keep you going, right? So if you get a cherry, you get whatever, 2 coins back. But her passion was not to get a bunch of cherries. Her passion was to be able to keep playing so she could hit the jackpot.
Yeah.
Right? So we're playing, well, we'll go for cherries to keep us going, but our bigger goal is to hit the jackpot.
Can I add one last thing, which I wish I had thought of, but to address more about the NGOs, like we actually stand up to nonprofits, and like Women's March tried to censor us at for one of our events, our protests last April, and we didn't take it. So like we stand up to nonprofits and we say, you know, you may be getting all this money and like you're Democrat aligned and, you know, all that liberal stuff, but we're the ones who are doing the actual work. We're not the ones who are spamming your email with like fund our porta potties or whatever. So, you know, like we're doing actual work. And I think when people see that, like that in itself is motivating. Like I'm not going to donate that $5 to Planned Parenthood. I'm going to go to, you know, the National Mobilization for Reproductive Justice meeting and I'm going to get involved. So like that's worth way more than $5.
Thank you, panelists, for such a lovely discussion. We're going to hand it over now to Andy for a lit review.
Hi. Yeah, we have tons of books all over here. If you look a kid in the candy store, the titles are just wonderful. I can't tell you too much about them, but I can show you a few. It says it, Policing the National Body, Race, Gender, and Criminalization. I'm not familiar with that author. This is the Radical Women Manifesto. It's $8. It's really short. It's a brief history of socialist feminism and our theory, our program, organizational structure. Everything is in here. This Women in the Family by Leon Trotsky, and Trotsky is one of the people, as you probably know, we rely on. Remember, who was it about 20 years ago? What would Jesus do? We started asking, what would Trotsky do? A Black gay anthology in the length. Anthology. Oh, yes, I did mention that one. June Jordan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I need to buy that.
You gotta hear, this one is some changes. Exactly. I think the prices are on the back, or you can just add. You just add to it. This one looks so interesting to me. Dragon Ladies, Asian American feminists, right? Breathe fire, and I'm sure they do. So we also have books in our bookstore over there. So please come and take a look at this stuff. It's all very enticing. And let one of us know if you want to buy.
And for lots of detail, so.
Oh, of course.
I wasn't sure. I brought a lot of copies. Please take some home with you so I don't have to lug them back to Bart.
Some tickets. I want a copy too. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Now for some community announcements. So we have a group tour of the West Oakland Mural Project and the Black Panther Party Women Museum on Saturday, March 30th at noon. Please sign up if you are interested. If you're on Zoom and you'd like to sign up, please indicate so in the chat. Our next FSP public meeting is Sunday, May 5th at noon at here, New Valencia Hall, and online. We'll be discussing the May Day Forum, Reproductive Justice is a Labor Issue. And then on Thursday, March 21st at 6:30 p.m., we have our National Mobilization for Reproductive Justice Zoom meeting. We're finalizing plans for an action on Sunday, March 24th, that Meredith mentioned before, to respond to the Supreme Court, who will be hearing the case, which could outlaw mifepristone. Lastly, we have on Sunday, March 24th, at the Federal Building, at noon, the protest against mifepristone. And I'm going to announce now our fund pitch total from today, and that is $285. Any other community announcements from this group here? Online? Okay, well, thank you guys so much. Thank you, panelists, so much. I'm honored to. I think it's so important that you documented everything in Deep Care. I am reading it as if it's a manual, basically. And I think for young 20-somethings like me, who we have some things in our brain, Nancy, okay? I think that like finding books like this is so important and so empowering, because things have been done before and we just need to look at that to move forward. So I really appreciate everything that you're doing, Angela, and our organizers and activists. So thank you so much. So please check out our bookstore now that the event is closing down, and we'll have Sandra read the raffle winner. Yeah.
Yes, I would very much like Angela to.
Sure.
In the jolly old basket.
Just one.
Just one, darling, and who's
Okay.
the lucky person?
259658.
59658. 259 from those.
It says Missy. Missy.
Oh, we'll go online, I think.
Yes, she was. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you for doing a raffle.
Actually, another one.
With the California.
Oh, yeah. Oh, right on.
Thank you guys so much.
She did.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah,
What a great connection.